CIET NCERT presents audiobook Exploring Society, India and Beyond. Textbook of Social Science for Grade 8.
Chapter 2, page number 21, Reshaping India's Political Map. On the top of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.1. This is an aerial view of the Qutub Minar complex in Delhi. The big questions. 1. How did foreign invasions and the rise of new dynasties reshape India's political boundaries during this period? 2. How did Indian society respond to invasions? How did India's economy adapt during times of political instability? 3. What impact did this period have on the lives of the people? In the right-hand corner, in the middle of the page, a QR code is given that will give you more information on the subject. Page 22, on the top of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.2, and this picture is about a timeline that establishes different empires and attacks upon them in India. In the year 1498, the Portuguese people arrived in India. In the year 1398, Timur attacked Delhi. In the year 1347, the Bahmani Sultanate was established. In the year 1336, the Vijayanagara Empire was established. In the year 1326, re-establishment of the Mewar kingdom took place. And in the year 1206, establishment of the Delhi Sultanate took place. The period in this chapter and the next is often called the latter part of the medieval period of Indian history. The term medieval, that is, between two ages, was originally applied to European history roughly from the fall of the Roman Empire, 5th century CE, to the Renaissance, Europe's cultural revival in the 14th to 16th centuries, nurtured by the rediscovery of Greek and Roman art and literature. It was once thought to mark a dark age before the development of modern science, but of course, Europe's and India's histories are very different, so applying the same term medieval to both is not ideal, and historians do not always agree on which period it covers in India. We will sometimes have to use the term medieval, but for us, it simply means the period from the 11th to the 17th centuries. In Tapestry of the Past chapters, we have tried to keep as few dates as possible. We will sometimes have to use the term medieval, but for us, it simply means the period from the 11th to the 17th centuries. In Tapestry of the Past chapters, we have tried to keep as few dates as possible, only those that mark important reference points. You will find it helpful to keep revisiting the timelines in those chapters. Revisit the maps too, as they will help you visualize the geography that was traversed by armies, common people, traders, scholars, or spiritual figures. Page 23. On top of the page, a picture is given. This is a timeline of various battles and establishments of different empires in India from the year 1520 until 1800. In 1526, the first Battle of Panipat was fought. Babur's victory establishes the Mughal Empire. In 1556, the second Battle of Panipat was fought, and Akbar's decisive victory took place. In the year 1565, Battle of Talikota and destruction of the Vijayanagara city took place. In 1576, Battle of Haldi Ghati forced Maharana Pratap to retreat. In 1671, the Battle of Sarai Ghat took place, and the Ahoms defeat the Mughals. In 1699, formation of the Khalsa by Guru Gobind Singh happened. In 1754, beginning of Maratha control of Delhi, and in 1799, the Sikh Empire was established. Spellings. Because of the difficulties in transcribing the Persian script in the Roman script, you will find some alternative spellings in parentheses here and there. For instance, Khalji or Khilji are the same. Similarly, we use here the now standard spelling of Mughal spelling, but alternatives use such as Mughul or Moghul are still sometimes used. The word Turkic is highlighted and it means peoples, languages, and cultures historically associated with a vast region stretching across Central Asia all the way to Turkey and Siberia. A new era in India's journey began in the early 11th century. Invasions from beyond the Hindu Kush mountains reshaped India's political map. No doubt India had seen much warfare in earlier periods, but the state of invasions by people from outside the Indian subcontinent during this period was unprecedented. Many of these invaders were Central Asian, Turkic, or Afghan. They were drawn to India not only for her reputed riches and for territorial ambitions, but also often to spread, by force of violence if necessary, their own versions of their religion. Let us now explore in this chapter the ever-changing landscape of India from the 13th century onward. Page 24. This page is a pictorial representation of a map of India. This is figure 2.3, and it is a comparison of the territories under the Tughlaqs and the Lodhis between 13th to 15th centuries and regional powers in the south and the east. Page 25. On the top of the page, two pictures are given. The first picture is figure 2.4, and it is a picture of the Qutub Minar in Delhi. The second picture is figure 2.5. It is a section of the Quwwat-ul-Islam, which is Might of Islam, mosque in Delhi's Qutub Minar complex. Its construction began in Qutubuddin Aybak's time, early 13th century, was completed by later sultans. An inscription states that materials from 27 destroyed Hindu and Jain temples were used in the constructions, some of which can be seen here. Rise and fall of the Delhi Sultanate. We begin our journey here with the Delhi Sultanate, formed after the defeat in 1192 of King Prithviraj Chauhan, who ruled over parts of northwestern India. This Sultanate saw the rule of 5 successive foreign dynasties of Turkic-Afghan origin: the Mamluks, or the slave dynasty, the Khiljis, or Khaljis, the Tughlaqs, the Sayyids, and the Lodhis, or Lodhis. While certain parts of northern India came under the control of the Delhi Sultanate, neighboring kingdoms such as the eastern Gangas in the east and the Hoysalas in the south resisted its advance, figure 2.3, and also emerged as thriving centers of art, culture, and administration. The city of Delhi also assumed a bigger role in the political landscape of northern India. The word Sultanate is highlighted here, and it means a territory ruled by a sultan or a sultan, a title that some Muslim rulers adopted. The Sultanate period was marked by political instability combined with efforts at territorial expansion. This resulted in military campaigns that raided villages and cities and plundered and destroyed temples and seats of learning. Page 26. At the top of the page in the left-hand corner, a picture is given. This is figure 2.6, and this is a picture of a coin minted by Alauddin Khilji, which bears the inscription Sikandar Sani, or the second Alexander in Persian. Successions. The appointments of new sultans or sultans were often violent. Almost 2 sultans out of 3 seized power by eliminating their predecessor, so that a sultan's average reign was hardly more than 9 years. Let's explore. Understanding figure 2.6. Why do you think Alauddin Khilji called himself the second Alexander? At the turn of the 14th century, Alauddin Khilji conducted military campaigns over large areas of north and central India, sacking and plundering many cities. At the same time, he also repelled several invasions by Mongol forces who were trying to add India to the vast Mongol Empire. It covered most of Asia at the time. His slave general Malik Kafur expanded the Sultanate's reach southward, conquering several kingdoms on the way. Their plundered wealth helped finance the Sultanate's enormous military apparatus. He also attacked a number of Hindu centers such as Srirangam, Madurai, Chidambaram, and possibly Rameswaram. Let us explore. What kind of resources do you think were needed to maintain an army and wage war in those days? Discuss in groups the various types of expenditure involved, from weapons or food for soldiers to animals used in warfare, road construction, etc. A few decades later, Muhammad bin Tughlaq or Tughlaq ruled Delhi and expanded the Delhi Sultanate's territories further. For the first time since the Mauryan Empire, most of the subcontinent was now under one ruler. Page 27. On the top of the page in the right-hand corner, a picture is given. This is figure 2.7, and it is a picture of the 19th century painting depicting Muhammad bin Tughlaq in his court. Although this dominance was significant, it proved to be short-lived. Muhammad bin Tughlaq had ambitious schemes, but they were often poorly executed. One such was moving his capital from Delhi to Daulatabad, then called Devagiri, near present-day Sambhajinagar. Perhaps he thought its more central location would offer better control of the empire. The people were forced to travel over 1,000 kilometers, and a few years later, as his plan misfired, he shifted the capital back to Delhi. Both transfers resulted in great loss of life, according to some sources. Another instance was the introduction of token currency, where cheap copper coins were declared to be tokens and have the value of silver or gold coins. Although this was a progressive idea, most of our currency today is actually token. At the time, this created confusion in the trade and encouraged people to counterfeit copper coins, all of which caused the economy to decline. The sultans and their court elite lived in luxurious palaces, enjoying elaborate clothing, jeweled ornaments, and fine food. This wealth was largely derived from plunder from their military campaigns, taxes levied on common people and conquered regions, and engagement in slave trade, as enslaved people provided free labor or were sent away to distant Central Asia to be sold. Page 28. But plunder, in turn, affected trade networks and agricultural production. This period also witnessed numerous attacks on sacred or revered images in Buddhist, Jain, and Hindu temples. Such destruction was motivated not just by plunder, but also by iconoclasm. The word iconoclasm is highlighted here, and it means the rejection or destruction of icons or religious images considered idolatrous. Think about it. Why do we use the term image rather than common terms like idol or icon? The latter two terms are considered pejorative in the context of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, whose orthodox sects condemn idolatry or the worship of idols or icons. India's classical texts use words like murti, vigraha, pratima, rupa, etc. to designate images, often statues, used for worship in temples or homes. In English, image is a neutral term. Some of the sultans also imposed a jizya, a tax on non Muslim subjects to grant them protection and exemption from military service. In practice, depending on the ruler, this discriminatory tax would be a source of economic burden and public humiliation, and formed a financial and social incentive for subjects to convert to Islam. At the end of the 14th century, Timur, a brutal Turkic Mongol conqueror from Central Asia, invaded northwest India and launched a devastating attack on Delhi, then a thriving city. As he wrote in his memoirs, his twofold objective was to wage war with the infidels and to gain something by plundering the wealth of the infidels. The word infidel is highlighted here, and it means literally someone who does not share the faith of a given religion. For medieval Christianity, infidels were Muslims or pagans. For medieval Islam, infidels were Christians, or in the context of India, Hindus, Buddhists, or Jains. Large numbers were killed or enslaved, and the city was left in ruins. Timur soon withdrew from India with huge plunder, leaving chaos behind. In the aftermath, the Lodhis emerged and established the last dynasty of the Delhi Sultanate. By then, however, its territory had shrunk considerably in the face of increasing resistance from other states and kingdoms from within India. Observe Figure 2.3. Page 29. Resistance to the Delhi Sultanate. Throughout its rule, the Delhi Sultanate faced resistance from many quarters. While many kingdoms fell into its net, it failed to subdue the eastern Ganga kingdom. Observe Figure 2.3 of Kalinga, which included present-day Odisha and parts of Bengal and Andhra Pradesh. One of its rulers in the mid-13th century, Narsimhadeva I, also spelt Narsinghadeva I, was noted for the military strength and cultural brilliance he brought to the kingdom. Apart from repelling multiple inroads of the Sultanate, he defeated the Delhi Sultanate's governor of Bengal. Partly to commemorate these victories, he built the famed Surya temple at Konark, present-day Odisha. In the right-hand corner of the page, a picture is given. This is Figure 2.8, and it is a statue depicting Narsinghadeva I seated on his throne, surrounded by attendants and musicians. Think about it. During the time of the Tughlaqs, the Musunuri Nayakas, Telugu chieftains, rallied over 75 more chieftains of the region, formed a confederacy that defeated the Delhi Sultanate forces and expelled Muhammad bin Tughlaq's army from Warangal, present-day Telangana, around 1330 to 1336. Do you think it would have been an easy task to bring together 75 leaders in those days? Page 30. On top of the page, in the left-hand corner, a picture is given. This is figure 2.9 and it is labeled, "The Hoysalas built magnificent temples, for instance, those of Belur," this picture, and Halebidu. This is a picture of a temple in Belur. We mentioned earlier Alauddin's push to the south, attracted by its renowned wealth. At the time, the Hoysalas ruled parts of southern India, mostly present-day Karnataka. Observe figure 2.3. And fended off several attacks from the Delhi Sultanate, remaining the only independent kingdom in the south. However, weakened by these attacks and internal conflicts, the Hoysala kingdom declined and in the mid-14th century was absorbed into Vijayanagara Empire further south. Reference below. Don't miss out. The sculpture in figure 2.9 narrates the story behind the Hoysala's emblem. Kannada folklore recounts the story of Sala, a young man who fought a lion to save his guru, giving the dynasty its name, Hoy, which means strike, Sala, Hoysala. The Delhi Sultanate also faced rebellions from the emergence of several independent regional sultanates. The Bahmani Sultanate, for instance, rose in the mid-14th century and controlled much of the Deccan for a while. Powerful sultanates also emerged in Gujarat, Bengal, and other regions, leading to a complex interplay of alliances and frequent wars. Parts of Rajasthan also remained beyond the reach of the Delhi Sultanate. In the 15th century, it faced stiff resistance from Rana Kumbha, the ruler of the Mewar kingdom, who also successfully repelled invasions from these later sultanates. The term Rana is highlighted here, and it means a title often used for Rajput kings. Page 31. On top of the page, a picture is given. It is figure 2.10, a view of the Kumbhalgarh fort in the Aravalli Hills. Don't miss out. Kumbhalgarh fort, figure 2.10, was built by Rana Kumbha in the 15th century in the Aravalli Hills and served as a stronghold for the rulers of Mewar, prominent Rajput kingdom, in the central and southern parts of today's Rajasthan. Surrounded by forests and steep slopes, it is famous for its massive 36-kilometer long wall, one of the longest continuous walls in the world. Let's explore. Why do you think such locations were chosen for many of the medieval forts? Discuss pros and cons. Hint: think of the issues of strategy, security, vulnerability, etc. The Vijayanagara Empire. While the Delhi Sultanate grew politically more unstable, a new center of power emerged in the south. In the 14th century, two brothers, Harihara and Bukka, who had initially served as governors under Muhammad bin Tughlaq, eventually rejected Delhi's authority and established an independent kingdom that became a significant force in southern India and grew into the Vijayanagara Empire. Page 32. On top of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.11 and it is labeled as a section of the ruins of Vijayanagara city, present-day Hampi. The large building in the picture is the Virupaksha temple. Don't miss out. According to popular folklore, Harihara and Bukka witnessed a remarkable sight at Hampi in present-day Karnataka, a hare turning around and chasing a pack of hounds, symbolizing unexpected strength and courage. When they recounted this incident to their guru, Vidyaranya, he interpreted it as a symbol of resilience and bravery and advised them to establish their capital at that very spot. To the north of the Vijayanagara Empire, observe figure 2.12, the Bahmani Sultanate was a major rival. It eventually fragmented into 5 independent states called the Deccan Sultanates: Bijapur, Golconda, Berar, Ahmednagar, and Bidar, each ruled by former governors or tarafdars who declared autonomy. The Vijayanagar rulers battled with the first two, as well as with the Gajapati rulers of Odisha in the east. Think about it. Have you noticed the term Pati in titles like Gajapati? Pati means lord or master and was commonly used by many ruling dynasties of this period to signify power and stature. The Vijayanagara kings were called Narapati, the Bahmani Sultanate rulers Ashwapati, and the Maratha rulers Chhatrapati, each title reflecting different aspects of kingship and power. Can you guess what these 3 terms might mean? Page 33. This is figure 2.12 and it is labeled Kingdoms in the Deccan and the Vijayanagara Empire. This map shows the Gajapati Kingdom, the Bahmani Sultanate, the Vijayanagara Empire, the Vijayanagara Empire under Krishnadevaraya, and other important cities. Page 34, Krishnadevaraya. In the 16th century, the Vijayanagara Empire reached its peak under its celebrated ruler Krishnadevaraya, who expanded and secured the empire's dominance over the Deccan. Under his rule, the empire achieved both military power and cultural renaissance. He patronized poets and scholars in Sanskrit, Telugu, and Kannada. He himself composed an epic poem in Telugu, Amukta Malayada, on the story of the Tamil poet saint Andala. One section of the work is a Rajaniti, royal policy, where he expounded his ideas of good governance. Krishnadevaraya provided grants to many temples, including Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh and the Vitthala temple in his own capital, Vijayanagara, which displayed many grand temples, palaces, and other buildings. At the bottom of the page, an image is given. This is figure 2.13 and it is labeled the Maha Mandapa or the Great Hall of the Vitthala temple. Note the grandeur and intricacy of the architecture, in particular the finely sculpted monolithic pillars. When struck, their smaller columns give out different musical notes, hence their name, musical pillars. Page 35. Don't miss out. Foreign travelers visited Vijayanagara for trade. Portuguese travelers, in particular, were very well treated as they came to sell horses, and the king did not want them to go and sell those precious horses to enemy kingdoms. One of them, Domingo Pace, left a long and detailed record of his stay in the Vijayanagara capital. An excerpt says, "This city seemed to me as large as Rome and very beautiful to the sight. There are many groves of trees within it, in the gardens of the houses and many conduits of water which flow into the midst of it. And in places there are lakes. The people in the city are countless in number. This is the best provided city in the world. The streets and markets are full of laden oxen. You could find in great abundance everything that you wanted. In the middle of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.14, and it is an image of a panel from the Vithala temple. Let's explore. In figure 2.14, what elements do you observe? What do they tell you about life then? Hint: observe the weapons, the animals, the activities. Page 36. After winning many wars against his neighbors, Krishnadevaraya died of illness in 1529. In 1565, the Deccan Sultanates formed a coalition and defeated the Vijayanagara forces led by Ramaraya, Krishnadevaraya's son-in-law, at the Battle of Talikota. The city was sacked over several months. Houses, shops, buildings, palaces, and most of its temples were destroyed, and much of its civilian population massacred. It was left in ruins. After this, the empire got fragmented into smaller regions ruled by Nayakas, who were former military governors. The empire came to an end in the mid-17th century. The Mughals. On the left-hand side of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.15, and it is labeled as the Battle of Panipat as depicted in a copy of Baburnama. Note the use of cannons in this image. While the Delhi Sultanate weakened, Babur, a Turkic Mongol ruler and military strategist who, having been thrown out of Samarkand, modern-day Uzbekistan, turned his sights to India. A descendant of Timur, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi at Panipat in 1526, which will later be called the First Battle of Panipat. It relied heavily on gunpowder, field artillery, and matchlock guns, which had recently been introduced in warfare in India. That defeat put the final end to the Delhi Sultanate and laid the foundation of the Mughal Empire, as Babur assumed control of the Delhi throne. Page 37. Babur and India. Babur left a candid autobiography of great historical value, Baburnama, or Babur's Memoirs. In it, he comes out as cultured and intellectually curious with a keen appreciation for architecture, poetry, animals, birds in particular, many of which he lists in some detail, and flora, fruit trees especially. But he was also a brutal and ruthless conqueror, slaughtering entire populations of cities, enslaving women and children, and taking pride in erecting towers of skulls made from the slaughtered people of plundered cities. Babur was nostalgic about Central Asia and found India to be a country of few charms. At the same time, he acknowledged, Hindustan is a large country and has masses of gold and silver. Through the rainy season, the air is remarkably fine, not to be surpassed for healthiness and charm. There are countless artisans and workmen of every sort in Hindustan. Perhaps for the last reasons, especially India's wealth, he decided to stay and build his empire in India rather than return to Central Asia. Think about it. What strikes you in Babur's impressions of India? Discuss in groups. After Babur's death in 1530, his son Humayun struggled to hold the empire together. Taking advantage of this, Sher Shah Suri, a powerful Afghan leader, established the Sur Empire over large parts of North India and introduced many lasting reforms. The empire was short lived, however, as Humayun soon reconquered the lost ground. Before this happened, Himu or Hemu, a skilled military commander and chief minister or wazir under one of the last Suri rulers, captured Delhi and ruled it briefly under the royal name of Hem Chandra Vikramaditya. Though enjoying some military successes, he was injured on the battlefield, the Second Battle of Panipat, when confronted by Babur's grandson Akbar. Captured, Himu was brought to Akbar, who had him beheaded. Akbar soon reclaimed Delhi for the Mughals. Page 38. Akbar. Declared emperor at the age of 13 upon his father Humayun's accidental death, Akbar set out to bring the entire subcontinent under Mughal control. His reign was a blend of brutality and tolerance, shaped by ambition and strategy. In early conquests, following many of his predecessors' examples, he showed no mercy at the fort Chittor or Chittorgarh in Rajasthan, which he besieged for more than 5 months in the face of determined resistance from the Rajput soldiers. They inflicted heavy losses on the Mughal army, but the fort finally breached, died fighting in large numbers, while hundreds of women committed jawhar. Observe box. Akbar ordered the massacre of some 30,000 civilians, and the surviving women and children were enslaved. Akbar was 25 at the time, and he sent a message of victory which read, "We have succeeded in occupying a number of forts and towns belonging to the infidels and have established Islam there. With the help of our bloodthirsty sword, we have erased the signs of infidelity from their minds and have destroyed temples in those places and all over Hindustan." Akbar followed his predecessors in this thought of his. A monarch should be ever intent on conquest, otherwise, his enemies rise in arms against him. As his empire grew, figure 2.16, he increasingly used political strategies to stabilize it. He entered into marriage alliances with princesses of neighboring kingdoms, welcomed Rajput and regional leaders into his court, abolished the jizya, and promoted the doctrine of Sulhi-Kul, literally peace with all, or tolerance of all faiths. Through interfaith dialogues, appointment of Hindu officials in high positions, and other bold reforms, Akbar expanded and stabilized his empire, even gaining the support of many Rajput rulers. At the bottom of the page, on the left-hand side, a box is given, and the text inside this box reads, "What is Jawhar?" When invading Turkic or Mughal armies conquered a territory, they often took the women as slaves or abused them. There are historical examples of Rajput women jumping into mass fires to avoid being captured and enslaved. This Jawhar was considered a heroic act of final resistance and a means of preserving one's honor. Thus, When Akbar finally broke into the Chittorgarh fort, hundreds of Rajput women, led by their queens and noble women, committed Johar. Page 39. On top of the page, a map is given. This is called the figure 2.16 and it is labeled The Mughals and the Rise of Regional Powers at Different Periods. In this map, there is an indication of Mughal Empire under Akbar in 1605, of Mughal expansion under Aurangzeb in 1700, of Rajput territories in 1751, of Ahom kingdom in 1826, and of the Sikh Empire in 1839, all over India. Akbar's court historian and biographer Abul Fazl recorded him as stating, quote, "Formerly I persecuted men into conformity with my faith and deemed it Islam. As I grew in knowledge, I was overwhelmed with shame. Not being a Muslim myself, it was unmeet, that is, inappropriate, to force others to become such. What constancy is to be expected from proselytes, that is, converted people, on compulsion?" Unquote. Page 40. On top of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.17 and it is labeled as a painting showing Akbar in his court receiving scholars, including two Jesuits dressed in black. Akbar's long reign lasted almost 50 years, 1556, to his death in 1605. While its middle period was relatively peaceful, the final 15 years involved fresh military campaigns in Kashmir, Sindh, the Deccan, and Afghanistan. Think about it. Why do you think Akbar employed different strategies to expand his empire, while the earlier rulers of Delhi relied mostly on military might? Page 41. Let's explore. Compare the maps in figures 2.3, 2.12, and 2.16. What differences do you notice? What is the reshaping that has occurred? In the middle of the page, an image is given. This is figure 2.18, and it is labeled as the five-storied Panch Mahal at Fatehpur Sikri, a city built by Akbar near present-day Agra. Despite being illiterate, Akbar became keen to explore Persian and Indian texts and showed great interest in classical Indian thought and often invited scholars to his court. Figure 2.17. He established a house of translation at Fatehpur Sikri, where he had major Sanskrit texts translated into Persian, including the Mahabharata, which is called Razmanama in Persian, or the Book of War, the Ramayana, with 176 beautiful miniature paintings, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Panchatantra. Akbar's son Jahangir shared with his father a love for art and architecture and tried to expand the empire into the Deccan. His son Shah Jahan fought several rebellions and is best remembered as the builder of Taj Mahal at Agra. Page 42. On top of the page, a picture is given in the left corner. This is figure 2.19 and it is labeled as a miniature painting illustrating the Persian translation of the Ramayana and depicting the well-known episode of Rama chasing the golden deer. The Taj Mahal is even today recognized as one of the great architectural marvels of the world. This period formed the peak of an immense flowering of art and architecture, which included the building of Humayun's tomb in Delhi and the Red Forts in Delhi and Agra. Other classical arts and music of India also flourished during this period, as also remarkable works of calligraphy and miniature painting. Aurangzeb. We mentioned earlier the frequent violent successions during the Sultanate period. This was repeated during the succession of Shah Jahan, who fell ill in 1657. He wished the throne to go to Dara Shikoh, his eldest son, but Dara's younger brother Aurangzeb defeated him in a series of battles and eventually executed him, presenting his severed head to their father. Page 43. Aurangzeb also removed his two other brothers. He had one arrested and executed and drove the second into exile. To prevent further challenge to his rule, Aurangzeb imprisoned his father Shah Jahan in the Agra fort, where he remained until his death. Aurangzeb crowned himself emperor in 1658 and named himself Alamgir, or conqueror of the world. He ruled for almost 49 years. Think about it. We saw above that Delhi's sultans' average reign lasted about 9 years. This figure becomes 27 years in the case of Mughal emperors up to Aurangzeb, and 16 years if we consider all Mughal rulers up to the end of the empire in the 19th century. What do you make of these numbers of years of reign? Aurangzeb, skilled in military matters, conducted many campaigns, conquering parts of the south in particular. Under his reign, the Mughal Empire reached its greatest expansion. Observe figure 2.16. Though constantly faced with significant rebellions, some of which we will turn to in the next section, Aurangzeb had to spend the last 25 years of his life fighting war after war in the Deccan. Maintaining large armies for those campaigns depleted the empire's treasury and put a great strain on the administration. Indeed, this is often considered one of key factors in the rapid decline of Mughal power after Aurangzeb's death in 1707. Aurangzeb, who belonged to Islam's Sunni sect, was deeply religious. He led an austere life and, unlike Akbar, observed all religious rituals and occasions. He gradually banned practices he regarded as un-Islamic, such as music and dance in his court, and reimposed the jizya tax on non-Muslims, as well as a pilgrimage tax on Hindus traveling to their sacred places, both of which had been abolished by Akbar. Page 44. This is figure 2.20, and it is labeled as Aurangzeb in court, holding a hawk with one of his sons standing in front of him. 17th century painting. Some scholars argue that Aurangzeb's motives were primarily political, that is, to establish and strengthen his empire's dominance. They also give examples of grants and assurances of protection he gave to some temples. While politics did play a part in his decisions, Aurangzeb's own farmans, or firmans, that is, edicts, make his personal religious motive clear too. In 1669, for instance, he ordered governors of all provinces to demolish schools and temples of the infidels and put down their teachings and religious practices. This is a direct quote. Temples at Benares, present-day Varanasi, Mathura, Somnath, among many others, were destroyed, as well as Jain temples and Sikh gurudwaras. This aspect of Aurangzeb was also visible in his persecution of Muslims of other sects, including Sufis and of Zoroastrians, the religion of Parsis in India, originally from Persia. Page 45. Let's explore. In his last letters to two of his sons, Aurangzeb wrote, quote, I came alone and I am going away alone. I know not who I am and what I have been doing. I have not done well for the country and the people, and of the future there is no hope. I was helpless in life, and I am departing helpless. Unquote. What do these words tell us about Aurangzeb? How do you feel about them? Think about it. Some of the invaders and rulers mentioned above committed terrible deeds and atrocities. Many more could have been mentioned. As the note on history's darker chapters on page 20 makes clear, we must keep in mind that this is about people in the past, not people of today. We need to know the facts of the past, and the victims of these atrocities deserve our respect and remembrance. But it is important to keep in mind that we, today, bear no responsibility for actions of individuals hundreds of years ago. Resistance to the Mughals. Let us survey some of the major rebellions that ended up eroding the Mughal power, keeping the special case of the Marathas for the next chapter. Over the centuries, many peasant communities rebelled against harsh exploitation. One such case in the 17th century involves the Jat peasantry in present day western Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, and eastern Rajasthan, who managed to kill an oppressive officer of the Mughal administration. In a subsequent battle, 20,000 men confronted the Mughal army and fought valiantly, but their Jat leader was killed and the rebellion suppressed. Many tribal groups, the Bhils, the Gonds, the Santals, the Koches, for instance, also fought back against attempts to annex their territory or impose taxes on them. While some of these groups were subdued or gradually integrated into the Delhi Sultanate or the Mughal Empire, others, especially those inhabiting forested, hilly, or remote regions, managed to maintain some degree of independence. Page 46. On top of the page, a box is given. Inside this box, there is an image. This is figure 2.21, and it is labeled as an artist's impression of Rani Durgavati. It is a sculpture of Rani Durgavati. The text inside the box reads, Rani Durgavati is remembered as a valiant queen of the Gadha kingdom, one of the Gond kingdoms in central India. From all accounts, she ruled wisely and made her kingdom prosperous. She kept an army of 20,000 soldiers and 1,000 elephants, with which she repelled several attempted invasions. When a general sent by Akbar attacked her kingdom in 1564, despite being outnumbered and outmatched in weaponry, she led her troops and fought bravely. Wounded, she took her own life on the battlefield to avoid capture. She was only 40. Her sacrifice became a symbol of regional pride and resistance, and she is still revered as a heroic figure in Indian history. Surge of the Rajputs. Because of their location in northwest India and the proud traditions they inherited from earlier dynasties, such as the Pratiharas, who had resisted the Arab invasions of Sindh a few centuries earlier. The Rajputs were often battling the invading forces from beyond the subcontinent. They had rebuilt their kingdoms after the Khilji's conquest. Two major clans emerged in this process in the Mewar and Marwar regions. Inspirational stories of their heroic deeds are still told today, in particular through popular ballads. Among the valorous rulers those clans produced, we met Rana Kumbha earlier. Rana Sanga, early 16th century, unified several Rajput clans, won many battles against sultans, ultimately meeting defeat against Babur at the Battle of Khanwa. Page 47. At the top of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.23 and it is labeled as an artist's impression of the Battle of Haldi Ghati from Udaipur Palace. So, this is a depiction of war taking place. Although he inherited a wounded kingdom from his predecessors, Mewar's ruler, Maharana Pratap, refused to accept Mughal suzerainty and became the face of Rajput resistance. A confrontation took place at the Haldi Ghati Pass in the Aravalis in 1576. Figure 2.23. And although the Mughal army had the upper hand, Maharana Pratap escaped and pursued for years guerrilla warfare against the Mughals from the Aravali hills, living in harsh conditions but firm on his independence. It is noteworthy that Maharana Pratap received strong support from the Bhils, who not only joined his troops as archers but also contributed their knowledge of the terrain, their service on other occasions too, earned them a respected place in Mewar's military tradition, as the Mewar emblem shows. Figure 2.22. The word guerrilla warfare is highlighted here, and it means a style of fighting where small groups with knowledge of the terrain carry out surprise attacks and ambushes to defeat bigger armies. At the bottom of the page, in the right hand corner, a picture is given. This is figure 2.22, and it is labeled the Mewar emblem with a Bhil warrior on the left and a Rajput warrior on the right. Page 48. While some Rajput states eventually allied with the Mughals through diplomacy and marriage alliances, some, especially Mewar, did not accept Mughal dominance. During Aurangzeb's reign, several Rajput nobles rebelled, including Durgadas Rathore of Marwar, who fought to protect the independence of Jodhpur. Mughal authority thus remained limited in Rajasthan. The Ahoms. In the 13th century, the Ahom ethnic group migrated from the present-day Myanmar to the Brahmaputra Valley and formed the Ahom kingdom there. During both the Sultanate and the Mughal periods, the Ahom rulers offered stiff resistance to attempts at expansion into the northeast. Their unique pike system called on every able bodied man to provide service to the state through labor or military duty in exchange for land rights. This allowed the rulers to create public infrastructure and maintain a large standing force without a permanent army. Over time, the Ahoms assimilated the local culture, promoted agriculture, encouraged diverse faiths, and contributed to the rich traditions of Assam. Let's explore. Discuss in class how the pike system affected the daily lives of the people in the Ahom kingdom, both in terms of challenges and benefits, and helped the king manage both the army and the economy. In the 17th century, when Aurangzeb sent Mughal forces, briefly capturing the Ahom capital, Gadgaon, the Ahoms used their knowledge of the terrain, dense forests, hills, and rivers, and persistent guerrilla tactics to repulse the attack, although the latter had more men and a larger fleet of riverboats. Notably, in the Battle of Saraighat, 1671, fought on the Brahmaputra River near present-day Guwahati, the Ahom military commander Lachit Borphukon and his 10,000 men defeated a Mughal force of 30,000 soldiers. Ultimately, the Ahom were able to preserve their independence. Page 49. Don't miss out. Ram Singh, the general of Mughal army, praised the Ahom warriors in these terms. Every Assamese soldier is expert in rowing boats, in shooting arrows, in digging trenches, and in wielding guns and cannons. I have not seen such specimens of versatility in any other part of India. Let's explore. How did the Ahoms use the rivers, hills, and forests of Assam to their advantage? Can you think of ways in which the geography helped them build defenses and fight wars? At the bottom of the page, two images are given. The first image is figure 2.24 and it is labeled as a plaque commemorating the Battle of Saraighat with an Ahom boat in the foreground. Saraighat War Memorial Park. The second image is figure 2.25 and it is labeled as statues depicting Ahom warriors during the Battle of Saraighat. Page 50. The rise of the Sikhs. In 15th century Punjab, Guru Nanak spread the message of equality, compassion, and the oneness of God, Ik Onkar. His followers came to be known as Sikhs. Although Sikhism began purely as a spiritual movement, the later Sikh gurus had to respond to the growing intolerance and persecution under some Mughal rulers. When Emperor Jahangir found out that Guru Arjan had supported his rebellious son, he had Guru Arjan tortured to death. This prompted Guru Arjan's son and successor, Guru Har Gobind, to introduce martial art training and form a Sikh army which fought several battles against the Mughal forces. Don't miss out. In the context of this chapter, Punjab refers to the vast region now split across India and Pakistan. The Sikh sacred text, Guru Granth Sahib, was first compiled by Guru Arjan. Guru Tegh Bahadur's hymns were added later. It stresses that there is one God for all, who established the earth as a home for dharma, and enjoins Sikhs to practice truthfulness, compassion, humility, and self control, among other values. An example is truth is high, but higher still is truthful living. In 1675, a group of Kashmiri Pandits approached Guru Tegh Bahadur seeking protection from religious persecution. The Guru decided to stand with them and court martyrdom. Arrested, Aurangzeb ordered him to convert to Islam. Despite torture and despite witnessing two of his disciples being tortured to death, the Guru refused. On Aurangzeb's orders, he was publicly beheaded in Chandni Chowk, Delhi. In response, his son Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th and last Guru, established the Khalsa, a martial brotherhood committed to justice, equality, and defense of the faith, which frequently clashed with the Mughal forces at great cost of life. Page 51. At the top of the page, An image is given. This is figure 2.26, and it is labeled as a miniature painting of Guru Gobind Singh. Don't miss out. Do you know what the Gurudwara Sees Ganj Sahib in Chandni Chowk, the famous shopping area in Delhi, signifies? In Sikhism, a Gurudwara is a place of worship. This one marks the site where Guru Tegh Bahadur, the ninth Sikh Guru, was beheaded by Aurangzeb in 1675. This historic Gurudwara is uniquely honored by the Sikh regiment, which has saluted it before the President in the Republic Day Parade each year since 1979. It stands as a powerful symbol of faith and sacrifice in Indian history. Page 52. Think about it. Why do you think Guru Tegh Bahadur endured torture rather than convert? Why did he think his sacrifice would make a difference? What values did the Sikh Gurus and the Khalsa embody? How are they relevant in today's world? As the Mughal Empire declined, especially under the onslaughts of the Marathas, as in the next chapter, several Sikh confederacies emerged in the Punjab region. They were ultimately unified through the efforts of Maharaja Ranjit Singh at the turn of the 19th century. Ranjit Singh's military acumen, diplomatic skill, and religious tolerance allowed him to establish a strong, centralized Sikh empire which spanned much of the northwest, including parts of Kashmir. Till the mid 19th century, this empire resisted both Mughal remnants and later British expansion. At the bottom of the page, a picture is given. This is figure 2.27, and it is labeled as this graphic sums up the chief dynasties involved in this chapter with a rough indication of their geographical locations. So these chief dynasties are Delhi Sultanate or the Mughal Empire, Ahoms, Eastern Ganga Kingdom, Gajapati Kingdom, Hoysalas or the Vijayanagara Empire, the Bahmani Sultanate, Rajputs, and the Sikhs. Page 53. Administering India. Administration under the Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate introduced a political system centered on the Sultan, who possessed absolute authority as the political and military head, and whose duties, according to contemporary chronicles, included defending the territories of Islam against possible aggression, collecting fees and taxes, and keeping in touch with public affairs and the condition of the people by personal contact. The Sultan was, however, assisted by a council of ministers who were in charge of various departments of the Sultanate. One instrument of the administration was the Ikta system, in which territories were assigned to nobles, also known as Iktadars, to collect taxes which, minus expenses, were supposed to go to the Sultan's treasury. They were needed in particular to maintain the army. The system created a network of local administrators loyal to the central authority, but their posts were not hereditary. While taxes were levied on trade at every stage, the burden fell most heavily on the peasantry, and some contemporary accounts report considerable cruelty in extracting revenue from the land. The Mughal administrative framework. Aiming at greater control and efficiency, Akbar reorganized his administrative machinery. The Diwan took care of the finances, while the Mir Bakshi looked after military matters and the Khan-e-Saman was in charge of public works, trade, industry, and agriculture. Besides the royal household, the Sadr was responsible for justice, religious, and educational matters. Such ministers were assigned to each of the empire's 12 provinces, or subas, which were further subdivided with effective checks and balances enforced between the government officials. At the village level, traditional structures of self governance continued more or less undisturbed. Page 54. On the top of the page in the left hand corner, a picture is given. This is figure 2.28 and it is labeled as a manuscript painting of Abul Fazl seated on a terrace with his completed chronicles before him. Akbar also instituted the Mansabdari system, as Abul Fazl recorded in his Ain-e Akbari, which describes Akbar's administration. Mansabdars, or officers, according to their mansab or rank, were expected to maintain a precise number of elephants, horses, camels, as well as troops for the state. This made it possible to assemble an army at a short notice without having to maintain a permanent centralized army. Regular inspections were carried out to ensure compliance. Mansabdars were generally paid by being assigned land or jagirs and were therefore also known as jagirdars. Despite Akbar's growing tolerance for different faiths, non-Muslims were kept in a minority in the higher echelons of the administration. For instance, the total percentage of non-Muslim officials in his administration rarely exceeded 1/3 of the total and was often much less. Even among Muslim officials, those of foreign origin were generally favored over those of Indian origin. Page 55. Todarmal, Akbar's finance minister, introduced an efficient revenue system. He made detailed surveys for crop yields and prices and determined prices for each crop on the basis of that information. He also initiated a systematic survey of the land in the entire empire, which boosted revenue collection and strengthened the state apparatus. We will see a different kind of administration, that of the Marathas, in the next chapter. People's lives. Despite shifting political powers between the 13th and the 17th centuries, India witnessed vibrant economic activity thanks to its agrarian foundations, thriving artisanal industries, community based and temple based economies, and extensive trade networks. Building on decentralized economics and social systems such as shrenis or guilds, jatis, professionally defined communities, and systems for credit, the subcontinent remained one of the wealthiest regions in the world. The Sultanate period saw some progress in infrastructural works, especially roads in North India, bridges, a few canals, and other irrigation works, apart from the creation of new cities, all of which expanded considerably during the Mughal period. Coins in several metals and denominations were introduced as currency. The Mughals will use a different system with a rupaya of silver and a dam of copper. On the bottom of the page, in the right-hand corner, an image is given. This is figure 2.29 and it is labeled as a Persian wheel used to draw water from the wells or tanks to irrigate fields. Page 56. On the top of the page, in the left-hand corner, an image is given. This is figure 2.30, and it is labeled as a Vijayanagar land grant inscribed on a copper plate, the equivalent of modern-day property deeds. Agriculture was the mainstay of the Indian economy. We have already seen how rulers relied on agrarian revenue to maintain their administration and military, typically extracting land revenue at 1/5 of the produce, though some of the sultans raised it as high as 1/2. The expansion of irrigation systems increased agricultural productivity, allowing for the production of multiple crops, including both food such as rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugarcane, spices, etc., and non food items such as cotton, which fed a thriving textile production, silk, wool, dyes, timber, jute, etc. Let us note that agriculture output varied from region to region and period to period. The peasantry suffered several severe famines in this period, with relief depending upon the particular ruler's benevolence. Apart from textiles, craftspeople made a wide range of products, from weapons to utensils to ornaments and jewelry items. Shipbuilding, essential to river and overseas trade, developed considerably in those countries. Indian goods were exported through coastal and riverside towns such as Calicut, Mangalore, Surat, Masulipatnam, or Hooghly. India imported much less than it exported. Import products included silk, horses, metals, and all kinds of luxury goods. Merchants from Arabia, Persia, now Iran, and Central Asia settled in Indian ports, contributing to the bustling trade activity. The hundi system also enabled merchants to transfer funds across political boundaries without physically transporting currency, making them less vulnerable to plunder. Trader communities such as Marwadis became adept at operating across different political regimes, developing parallel systems of credit and trust that functioned independently of official structures. Page 57. Don't miss out. A hundi was a written instruction to make payment to an individual. It could be carried across political borders and enabled financial transactions without the need to carry currency, a precursor to modern banking. These systems worked across trade networks without the participation of the ruling classes. Temples as centers of economic activity. Many temples were more than centers for worship, learning, social interaction, or performing arts. They also created ecosystems with bustling markets. Ruling classes donated land and wealth, dan, to temple deities, held in trust by temple managers who developed community infrastructure such as irrigation systems, tanks, etc., and pilgrim accommodations such as dharmashalas and chhatrams. Temples provided merchants with credit and funded internal as well as maritime trade. While early periods saw prosperity, the late 1600s witnessed economic stress. Peasants were often left with small share of their produce after taxes and payments to intermediary parties. This caused many to lose their land and become bonded laborers. Historians suggest that craftspeople and laborers too often faced harsh economic conditions. India was still a land of abundance, as testified by many Arab and European travelers, but the wealth was largely concentrated in the hands of the rulers, courtiers, high officials, and the merchant class. Frequent warfare, in addition, caused forced displacement of population. At the level of the common people, there were instances of clashes, especially over sacred sites that had been desecrated or destroyed under the ruler's sanction. But by and large, people of different faiths and communities lived peacefully, side by side, economically dependent on each other. Page 58. Even as most rulers across India patronized the arts, communities too strove to maintain or revive the traditions, many of which adapted to changing circumstances. Among those cultural traditions, a fair degree of interaction resulted in the creation of a shared heritage. Through it all, India endured economically prosperous on the whole, but often politically unstable. During this period of frequent reshaping of the political map, India faced serious challenges but survived. It is a tale not only of hardship but also of resilience through the sword when the occasion demanded, but also through fresh creation in art, literature, spirituality, and timeless values. Before we move on, this period witnessed many foreign invasions led by Turkic, Afghan, and Mughal forces, which caused widespread destruction, the fall of old dynasties, and the rise and fall of kingdoms and empires. Continuous warfare, alliances, and conquests reshaped India's political boundaries. The period had many instances of religious intolerance. Buddhists, Jains, Hindus, Sikhs, Zoroastrians, and tribals suffered severe persecution at times, though some rulers were more broad minded than others. Agriculture and trade expanded, enhancing India's wealth and connectivity with the wider world. Yet the economic condition of the common subjects generally remained harsh. Indian society showed adaptability and resilience in rebuilding towns, cities, temples, and other aspects of the economy. At the same time, it found ways to preserve cultural traditions and blend indigenous and foreign elements to create new cultural expressions. Many forms of art and culture, including architecture, music, and painting, flourished. Page 59. Questions and activities. Question 1. Compare the political strategies of the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughals. What similarities and differences existed between them? 2. Why did kingdoms like the Vijayanagara Empire and the Ahom kingdom manage to resist conquest for a longer time compared to others? What geographical, military, and social factors contributed to their success? 3. Imagine you are a scholar in the court of Akbar or Krishnadevaraya. Write a letter to a friend describing the politics, trade, culture, and society you are witnessing. 4. How come Akbar, a ruthless conqueror in his young days, grew tolerant and benevolent after some years? What could have led to such a change? 5. What might have happened if the Vijayanagara Empire had won the Battle of Talikota? Imagine and describe how it could have changed the political and cultural history of South India. 6. Many values promoted by early Sikhism, including equality, seva, and justice, remain relevant today. Select one of these values and discuss how it remains relevant in contemporary society. 7. Imagine you are a trader in a port city such as Surat, Calicut, or Hooghly. Describe the scenes you see as regards goods, people you trade with, movement of ships, etc. Page 60. This page has a blank text box and it is titled Noodles. These noodles are our way of saying notes and doodles. So use the space to make notes and make your own favorite doodles. Page 60. This chapter ends here.
Narration Divya Gupta. Sound recordist Virendra Rawat. Production assistant Mukul Singh. Directed and produced by Vimalesh Chaudhary. This audiobook is brought to you by CIET NCERT, New Delhi, India.